morning once again, and you're still watching Sunrise at Sea. The conversation on Twitter Jabs continues as we discuss inflation, the rising commodity prices in Uganda, the rising fuel prices, and of course, most recently, the rising taxi operators' fares that they did put into place. And joining me at the center of this conversation is none other than Dr. Ben Sembajwe. I hope I got that right and correctly. Well, he is a PhD holder, economics lecturer, and director of quality assurance at the Mutesa Royal University. Well, he's also the director of operations and international relations at Gateway Research Center, which is also known as GRC. Good morning, Dr. Ben, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning. The name?
Shivan.
Shivan. Good morning, Shivan.
Yes, nice to have you this morning.
Same to me.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, today we are discussing issues in regard to inflation. Of course, we are looking, and this comes at a time when we saw fuel prices going over the roof. We had commodity prices going over the roof, where a bar of soap that used to sell for about 4,000 is now going for up to a price of 10,000. You know, we have also taxi operators have decided to increase fares of transporting people. Of course, this is a whole trickle-down effect. So in your expertise and in your opinion, what would you make of the current economic atmosphere in Uganda?
Thank you, Shivan. I want to say to the listeners, good morning. Yes, it is true, prices have gone up, especially those of transport sector. But we have to realize that this has turned to be a global issue. And I think it's not only Uganda. We are seeing people experiencing high commodity prices in developed and developing countries. However, we need to know that as Uganda, we need to do something about this. We can't leave it to be like this as if we don't have policymakers. So we have to appreciate that COVID did great work as far as production is concerned, as far as running the economy is concerned. Therefore, we need to think as people, as educated country, in order to make sure that our people do not suffer. As Shivan, you've said, transport fares of recent have increased between 500 to almost 10,000, which we are, as economists, we are seeing this is abnormal. Really, it has never happened. We are also seeing the commodity prices. If I may say, some of the necessities, you've mentioned soap, we are looking at cooking oil. As I was coming, I read through the minister's statement, which says oil has taken the lead in increase in prices. Then we have soap taking around 34%. To me, I believe this is abnormal. When you look at our people, our community, this is abnormal. I think much has to be done. As you've noted that the government is trying to make sure that people come out of poverty, but there is no way that we can come out of poverty if all of these are intervening. Effects of high prices, particularly fuel, is so great to our economy, because you may realize, or you are aware, that fuel is one of the engine to growth. If we really have to stabilize our prices, something has to be done with fuel prices. You've had the effect. People are blaming the cause of this high rocketing prices to the war between Russia and Ukraine. But personally, I don't want to be made to believe, because Shivan, you are aware that prices of fuel increased before this war broke out, which means that before we think about the war causing our inflation, we need to come back and re-examine what went wrong. One time I thought maybe Bank of Uganda has not played its role as regards price stabilization. As I was still again thinking about this, I thought maybe the death of our governor contributed. These new people have not picked some history, how it has been governed. But all the same, as Ugandans, we have to do something. We may realize there's been some shortages as regards supply of intermediate goods, which is true. Some of our raw materials, we get them from countries like Malaysia, Brazil, and so on. This might have affected. But there are things really we have seen that are being produced in Uganda, but have increased prices. Let's talk about building materials. You can look at the steel, the iron bars, cement. The cement prices increased between 29,000 up to now 4,200, 2,000. I think this is really talking about the war is overemphasizing the point. We need to do something locally here so that we can come up with a stabilized economy. All our, as you talked about inflation, to reduce our inflation. There are some things that we can do here.
So even while we're looking at inflation, I mean, we talked about fuel prices rising, we've talked about commodity prices, we've talked about taxi fares rising as well. What does this mean for Uganda as a country at large?
Of course, the moment prices have increased, it implies cost of production is going to increase. And if the cost of production increases, then there will be further shortage in production. And what will imply? Few goods being produced, and then many people will be running after those few goods, and consequently further inflation.
Okay.
And when you look at the fuel itself, transport costs, the farmers, this is where they depend. If fuel is increased, they will not be able to bring their produce to the marketing areas. I think as regards fuel, there is a lot we can do. You remember when the drivers were striking during COVID, and just a few days we are suffering. I think as a government we need to look at things like putting up reservations. The economy cannot be put on standstill within 2 days. So I think there is a big lesson we are learning from such. And this has never happened. I was looking at the prices of soap. This has never happened. Having one piece of bar at almost 10,000. If this is not handled well, I think as Ugandans, we are predicting to doom.
So Doctor, you highlighted and said very many people have come out to say that this inflation and why we have commodity prices going up, they're completely blaming it on the war that is going on between Ukraine and Russia. And you do not share the same sentiment. So then I would ask, what is the biggest cause that is causing this economic unrest in the country?
One, I think Ugandans were not prepared for such shocks.
Okay.
One thing is, COVID played a role. I cannot say this. We are coming out of elections, and you know the injection of money in the economy might have contributed. But what is disturbing me is that the price of the dollar vis-a-vis Ugandan shillings has not gone up. So the depreciation rate is not much. At the same time, the appreciation, we're experiencing some appreciation. And again, because when you experience depreciation, we would be seeing greater inflation. But again, there is no depreciation. When you look at the dollar, it's a bit stable, which means our shilling is gaining what? Value. But again, there is inflation. What could have gone wrong? Probably that's why I'm talking about the death of our governor might have contributed. Maybe in a transit to the new regime, that could be. Maybe, of course, there have been some bottlenecks in production. As you realize that we have not been active during COVID, that shortage might have been, but not at this level. Not at this level. And when you look at the prices, I was examining the prices of fuel, diesel and petrol. They have been, since 2017, they have been slightly increasing. Only that it has been more during 2020 and 2021. But when you look at the trend, 2017, it was around 3,240. But as per now, you may find a petrol station selling fuel at 5,340.
Okay.
So it has been increasing slowly by slowly. Probably, as you said, because yesterday you had the bombing of the line from Russia to European Union, probably we expect those impacts to be felt, but not at this time. It will be later. It will be later.
So would you say, and these are some of the tweets that we read earlier on, looking at the side of taxpayers' money, but also looking at taxes first in particular, would you say that doing away with taxes or even reducing the taxes on some of these commodities would be the way to go? Because this is something that has been fronted by a number of people.
Yes, Shivan, I think this is where I was going. When you look at the taxes imposed, particularly I want to deliberate this on fuel.
Okay.
Because I know fuel, the moment fuel goes down, everything will be moving, at least somehow better. When you look at taxes imposed on fuel, because I was, according to my view, I was proposing that if the government could look out to all necessities, let's say salt, let's look at oil, let's look at electricity, let's look at soap, as we made. And then taxes are almost done away with. Because at this moment, we want to see how we stabilize our economy. But the question that will come later will say, you man, what are you saying? Where is the government going to get the revenue for funding infrastructure? But we have various things where we can place these taxes, replacing these ones from our basic necessities. Put big taxes on alcohol, because people will always drink. Alcohol is one of the addictive commodity. People will drink it whether you tax it. Very many people are taking cigarettes. Put taxes on cigarettes, so that we can compensate our taxes removed.
So in other words, you're saying taxes in order to also, be able to live in an economy where even Omuntu Awas is able to afford a bar of soap, is that we should put more taxes on the
non-essential goods. You see? Put taxes on all the clothes. Because these old clothes will be consumed whether, because our people may not afford. But again, remember, putting taxes on all the clothes, you are implementing a policy so that the industries are also able to produce. So you are reducing competition on new clothes. Place taxes on other non-essential goods. Then also as you've said, the government can now come down, discuss with the traders of fuel, those who are importing, sit down, and then you see how we can cost share. Because one of the things that is bringing high fuel prices is tax. Sit down with them, see the contribution of the government, and see the contribution of in an effort to bring this fuel to a medium price, so that everybody can afford. I was analyzing this impact on coffee growers. How are they going to produce? You remember, coffee is the second in bringing for us some revenue, or a foreign exchange. Now, how will a farmer in a rural village bring his coffee to a selling place when the fuel is as high? At the end of the day, the cost of production will be high, and consequently, even coffee will remain in there where they are, in the garden, let me say. So at the end of the day, we cannot have revenue being collected. Again, we are also saying that the Bank of Uganda, so the central bank, yes, on interest rate, okay, we can see how it monitors the prime lending rates. How? Because remember, the people are coming from a shock of COVID, yes, and they need to recover. Consequently, if the prime lending rates are discussed, regulated by Bank of Uganda through commercial bank, so that there are short-term loans, that urgent-term loans, so that people's business do come up. So necessarily injecting more money may cause inflation, but at this point, we need to see that small producers are able or are supported to come back into the business. And we believe if they are supported in that way, through the central bank, regulating via commercial bank,
Yes.
discussing with them how they implement the prime lending rates, then we can be able to see our economy recovering from such shocks.
So even while we're looking at some of the incentives or the measures that we can put in place to actually curtail the situation at large, do you think that reduction in public spending would be also among the things that need to be put into action?
Public spending, I think the government is trying to do this by reducing the public spending, but not necessarily that we should reduce, because when you spend, you expect the activities to take place.
Yes.
But if you try to compress it by not spending, of course spending should be on priority. That's what I want to say. If they are spending, let's look at again, where is the shortage? Can we finance that shortage? Looking at what commodities that are having the highest inflation rate. And then the government can emphasize. In the midst of all of these, we also need to improve people's income. But how? We have had the doctors demanding for higher pay, teachers are having the higher pay. The government at this moment may not have all that money, but again they should look at, is this person earning reasonably? Because at the end of the day, these are the people that play the role in the market.
Yes.
The teachers are the one buying goods. If they are poor, the goods will not be bought. The local people are the one buying goods. The civil servants are the ones buying goods. So as the government is trying to, not regulating public expenditure, by maybe squeezing people's income,
Yes.
they can look at the priority. They can look at priority. The government has still emphasized the element of infrastructure, which is very good. But again, who are going to move on those infrastructure? Are these people poverty-ridden? Are they the ones going to use? Because a poor person looking at a tarmac road may not see any advantage as regards his pocket. People believe in what is in their pocket. But to me, I believe government should regulate expenditure, but singling out where is the shortage in production, and then spend more on that, and consequently reducing on this general inflation.
Okay, so Dr. Ben, as we wrap up the conversation, what can government do to save the situation?
Of course, as I said, can we single out the basic necessities, and then we completely do away with the taxes?
Okay.
This could help. I've mentioned about electricity being a necessity because it is the engine of production.
Yes. So
the moment prices on electricity is reduced, today when you look at the internet has come into play, but the prices are high. This is where people are contacting their customers. So we need to boost the sector of production and selling and the distribution. That's very important. Again, as you said, I've said we can tax those sectors that are not important to replace the taxes that we might have lost when we reduce taxes on basic necessities. I've also said the central bank may liaise with the commercial bank and see to it that even a poor person can access a small loan and then motivate production.
Okay.
Then,
so what advice would you give to a Ugandan who is watching us this morning on CTV, and you know they are overwhelmed by commodity prices, they are overwhelmed by the taxi fares, they're overwhelmed by commodity prices and the fuel prices as well? What would you tell them? One
thing is that maybe let me look into the future so that people are aware of if these circumstances do not change.
Okay.
One, if we don't handle this issue of inflation, there will be inflation will increase from a single digit to probably double digit,
okay,
which is galloping inflation, and this is very dangerous to our economy. Production will have to reduce if we don't handle this issue very well. Thieves will increase because people cannot afford life. They resort to stealing. Unemployment, you've seen some petrol stations will not afford these younger people who are working
Yes.
may lose their job. Then also the business sector will decline. Consequently, the taxes will also decline, revenue will be reduced, and consequently the government will not able. Rights and strikes may come up.
Okay,
Yes.
so the last question which I posed to you, a Ugandan that is watching us this morning that is overwhelmed by the current situation, of course with the inflation that is happening in the country, what would you tell them?
One, in the hardship we are having, they should strive to save what they have.
Savings.
Saving. Otherwise, if they let out everything they have, they may not have future. Secondly, a situation where you can leave a vehicle at home, please leave it there. Use other means, probably walking. And I'm seeing walk to work is coming back simply because people cannot afford. In reality, people may not afford fuel. Thirdly, reduce on the journeys. If you are moving unnecessarily, using the vehicle, reduce it. Then we can also see to it that let's go for essential services only. If you are at home, select. If you can do away with the sugar and you can have salt, then it's better. Because at the end of the day, the income has not changed. Then also, farmers, continue growing. Don't be scared by this escalating prices, because we need to maintain our economy.
Yes.
We need to maintain our economy. Probably, I cannot go without talking about the parish development model, which is coming. To me, I think I would advise people who may get this money to put it into productive activity. Otherwise, with this current inflation, if you decide to have part eaten, all will be eaten. And at the end of the day, the aim of eliminating or reducing poverty may not come up.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ben, for joining us this morning on Sunrise at Sea and on CTV and giving us an insight in regard to the conversation around inflation in Uganda.
Okay.
Well, that winds up the conversation that we had for you this morning on Sunrise at Sea. On the Twitter jabs, if you missed, well, I was with Dr. Ben, and he is a PhD holder, economics lecturer, and director of quality assurance at the Mutesa I Royal University. And two things that I'm going to take back home. One, he said, please cut down on the journeys. Settle. If you're at home, please settle. You do not have to move. You will not die if you stay home. So if you do not have to move, please do not move. But also, the second thing is that if you can afford to walk to work, if you can afford, if your place that you work with is near, if you need to go somewhere and it is quite near, or even if it's far, do some exercise. You could lose a few calories and pounds, and also, keep in shape. So if you must, please do exercise, leave the car at home, stay at home if you do not need to move, and that way, in one way or the other, you would actually be beating this whole commodity prices and fuel prices that are continuously rising in Uganda. Otherwise, that wraps up the conversation that I had for you this morning on the Twitter jabs. However, we still do have quite a lot in store for you. And up next is our beauty, wellness, and lifestyle segment. And today on our wellness and lifestyle segment, we take a look at personality and character traits. It's very important that you understand the kind of personality you have and the traits that you possess, because they can either make you or break you. So keep watching Sunrise at Sea.